This cracked desert dirt hadn't grown a decent blade of grass in years, no rain coming, no bag of fertilizer, no sack of seed, and one season later it was ankle deep in living pasture, and the only thing that touched it was a herd of animals. Before we get into how that's even possible, if you love the idea of a tougher garden that survives on almost nothing, subscribe and stick around, because desert gardening secrets like this are exactly what this channel is built on. Okay, picture it properly. One patch of ground photographed twice. In the first shot, it's bare and split into little plates, the kind of hardpan you'd swear was paved. Dead. In the second shot, same fence, same corner, same dirt, and now it's green thick enough to swallow your boots. Nothing was trucked in, no irrigation line was laid, no seed was scattered, just hooves. So how does that work? How do a bunch of animals do the job of a tractor, an irrigation line, and a fertilizer plant all at once? Because that's what happened here. Hooves broke the ground open like a tractor would, dung and urine fed it like a fertilizer plant would, and the whole thing kicked back to life without a drop of extra water. That's the trick this whole story is going to hand you, and by the end, you're going to know exactly how to do a scaled down version of it on your own baked backyard. But first, you have to understand one thing about dry ground, because everything else hangs on it. Bare dry soil is not empty, it's sealed. When the sun beats on exposed dirt day after day, it bakes the top layer into a hard crust. Think of a sponge that dried out and went stiff. A wet sponge drinks water. A bone dry one, water just beads up and rolls off the top. That's your dead patch. That's your baked lawn corner. The surface has turned into a lid, and that lid ruins everything. Seed lands on it and can't get a grip, so the wind takes it. Rain finally comes, hits that hard surface, and instead of sinking in, it sheets off sideways and disappears. The soil didn't lose its life. The life got locked underneath, sealed off from air, water, and seed. Go do this right now. Go press your thumb into your driest bit of yard. If it's hard as a plate, that's the crust. That's the exact thing we're about to break open, because every single move in this story is really just two jobs. Crack that sealed crust and feed the living stuff trapped beneath it. Hold on to that lens, crust on top, life underneath. That's the whole game. Now here's where the story really starts. Decades ago, a young biologist named Alan Savory is staring at the drying rangelands of Zimbabwe. Grass thinning out, bare soil spreading, rivers running dry earlier every year, and Savory does what any trained conservationist of his time would do. He reaches for the obvious cure. The thinking went like this: the land is exhausted, the animals ate it down, so take the pressure off, rest it, pull the livestock, fence it off, leave it completely alone, and let nature quietly stitch itself back together. Clean, logical. It's what your gut would tell you too. Fewer mouths, more grass, except it didn't come back. Savory rested that land, and it got worse. Not a little worse. Visibly, painfully worse. On the ground he'd protected, the grass stood up dead, gray, brittle stalks left standing, where nothing grazed them, nothing trampled them, nothing broke them down. Old growth just choked the new growth trying to come up underneath. And around it, the bare dirt kept spreading. The rested land was dying faster than the land that still had animals on it. Sit with how backwards that is. He removed the thing everyone blamed for the damage, and the damage sped up. The cure made the patient sicker. That reversal broke his whole picture of how deserts work, and it forced a much stranger question. What if the bare ground wasn't suffering from too many animals? What if it was starving for the opposite, the disturbance, the trampling, the mess that a big moving herd used to bring? What if the desert didn't need fewer animals at all? It needed them used completely differently. And that's the crack. Savory fell straight through, because the cure he eventually landed on wasn't fewer animals. It was a way of using them that copies exactly how wild herds behaved for thousands of years. And it starts with one move that sounds completely backwards: packing the animals tighter, not spreading them out. Think about why a wild herd bunches up in the first place. Lions, wolves, anything with teeth. When danger's near, the animals slam shoulder to shoulder into a tight mob, because the one who wanders off alone gets eaten. That fear packed them together for thousands of years, and that tight packing is exactly what a rancher recreates on purpose. Savory called it the bunch. Cattle jammed so close you couldn't walk between them. And here's why density is everything. It's not the animals themselves that heal the ground. It's what all those bodies do to the dirt in one short, violent visit. Spread 10 cows across a hillside and they nibble politely and leave. Pack the same 10 into a tight knot, and now every square foot of that baked crust gets hit. Density unlocks the next 3 steps. Without it, nothing works. So, step 2, the stamp. Remember that sealed crust, the dry soil baked into a hard shell that shrugs rain off like a dried out sponge? Thousands of hooves come down on it, and they chip it, crack it, break it open. That same hoof does 3 jobs a farmer would normally need machines for. It scratches the crust so water can finally sink in. It presses the old, gray, dead grass flat onto the ground where it turns into instant mulch instead of standing there choking the living plants. And it punches loose seed down into the dirt, into real contact with the soil where a seed can actually root instead of blowing away in the wind. One animal doing the work of a tractor. Step 3, walks in right behind it, the fertilizer that fertilizes itself. As that mob moves across the ground, it drops dung and urine in a heavy, concentrated dose right where the hooves just broke the surface. That manure is loaded with microbes and nutrients, and it soaks straight into the cracked, opened soil. No bag, no fertilizer plant, no cost. The same hoof that plowed the ground now feeds it. Tractor and fertilizer factory, and it eats grass for fuel. Now, here's where most people get it wrong. Pause for a second and guess. Is the secret the number of animals, or is it something else? Keep that guess in your head, because step 4 is the real secret. The title's been dangling, and it's not about how many cattle you own. It's timing. The herd is moved fast and moved often. They hit one strip hard, all 4 steps in a single day or 2, and then they're gone, off to fresh ground. And the strip they trampled, it gets left completely alone to rest for weeks, sometimes months. That's the whole trick. Disturb hard once, then walk away and let it recover. If you'd guessed movement, you got it. It's the rhythm, not the head count, that wakes dead ground. Think about how backwards that felt at first. The land looked overgrazed, so the instinct was to remove animals and let it rest gently. But gentle, constant nibbling never breaks the crust and never lets the grass fully recover either. One hard hit, then a long rest is what the desert was starving for. And this is where it stops sounding like theory. On Alan Savory's own research ranch in Zimbabwe, a place called Dimbangombe, they ran exactly this. Bunched herds, moved fast, followed by long rest. And that dryland ground ended up supporting several times the livestock the land was thought to hold. Read that again. Several times more animals on ground everyone assumed was already pushed past its limit, while the bare patches between the grass started closing up and turning green. Let me put that in your terms. Picture your own yard. Grass thick enough to swallow your boots, growing on ground that used to grow nothing but dust. That's not a metaphor. That's Dimbangombe. A patch that produced almost nothing turned into pasture so dense you'd lose your ankles in it, and not $1 of water bill paid to do it. And if you'd stood on that ground through the whole thing, here's what you'd have heard. At the start, nothing. Silent, cracked dust, hard as a road, the kind of quiet that means dead. Then one day, a roar of hooves, dust in the air, wet ground, the mob pressing everything flat, then quiet again. But months later, you come back, and the sound has changed. Now it's wind. Wind moving through standing grass on the exact patch that made no sound at all. So that's the whole trigger. Bunch them tight, let the hooves stamp and seed, let the dung feed, then rest it long. 4 moves and dead desert becomes pasture for almost nothing. If it works on the driest ground on earth, your baked backyard has flat run out of excuses. But you're sitting there thinking the obvious thing. You don't own cattle, you don't own 1 cow. So here's the twist that turns this from a rancher's trick into yours. You don't need a single animal, because on your own hard-packed ground, in your dying lawn, in your bare bed, you are the herd. And there are exactly 3 moves that make you move one hard-packed soil. the kind where you push a spade in and it clangs back at you like you hit concrete. That crust is your sealed sponge, baked shut, water running off it instead of sinking in. So you become the stamp. You take a garden fork and you drive it in, rock it back, break the seal open across the whole patch. No fancy tool, no tiller, just holes and cracks where air and water can finally get down. Then here's the part almost everyone gets wrong. Don't rake off the dead grass and the clippings. Lay them flat, press that dry brown litter right down onto the broken soil, the way 1,000 hooves press old grass into the dirt. That layer shades the surface, holds the moisture, and rots down into food for the life underneath. You just did the tractor's job and the mulch's job in 10 minutes. That's the stamp. Move 2, the dying lawn. Pale, thin, half of it bare, and you've been babying it. Light mowing every week, a splash of water every evening, and it keeps getting weaker. That constant little nibble is exactly the wrong medicine. A wild herd never grazes a patch soft and slow forever. It hits hard once and leaves. So you become the movement. Pick one strip, disturb it hard in a single short burst, scratch it up, feed it once, and then walk away. Rest it for weeks, stop the daily hose, let the roots reach down looking for water instead of loafing at the surface waiting for you. Disturbance, then rest. Real rest. That gap is where the grass rebuilds itself, thicker and tougher than your gentle daily fussing ever made it. That's the movement. Move 3, the bare bed. Sad, empty dirt where nothing's coming up, and you've probably scattered seed on top and watched it blow away or dry out, because loose seed sitting on a hard crust never touches living soil. It needs contact. So you become the hoof and the seed, press that seed down, firm it in with your hand, your boot, the back of a rake, until it's tucked against the soil, not floating on it. Then cover it with the very debris you'd normally sweep away. Old leaves, clippings, spent stalks. That blanket keeps the seed damp and shaded long enough to root instead of frying by noon. That's the contact. So look at your worst patch of yard right now and tell yourself which of these 3 you'll fire first. Trample, burst, or press. One of them fits what you're staring at today with tools you already own. Now, here's the whole thing in one line. The entire herd trick, the thing ranchers use to bring grass back on ground that hasn't grown a blade in years, with no fertilizer and no seed. Disturb hard, feed once, then rest long. That's it. That's the trigger. Break the seal in one strong hit. Drop the feeding, the mulch, the manure in one concentrated dose. Then leave it alone long enough to heal. Every fix I just handed you is that same sentence, shrunk down to your size. Disturb hard, feed once, then rest long. And this is the part that should stop you cold. The principal firing in your little bare bed is the exact same principle that let that dryland ranch in Zimbabwe carry several times the animals the land was supposed to hold, while its bare dirt turned back into pasture thick enough to hide your boots. Same trigger, timing over quantity. Hit once, then rest. The only difference between a healed African rangeland and your healed backyard strip is scale. The mechanism doesn't care how big your ground is. It never did. Think about what that actually means. Bare, cracked desert floor, no rain in the forecast, no bag of seed, no fertilizer, no irrigation line, and a season later, that same dirt is ankle deep in living grass, green as anything, and the only thing that ever touched it was a herd of animals moved the right way at the right time. That picture felt impossible when we started. It isn't. It's just physics and timing, working on the poorest ground on earth, which tells you something about your own dry backyard. Your problem was never that you lack resources. You've got soil, you've got sun, you've got dead grass you keep throwing in the bin. What you were missing was the sequence. Disturbance done right, feeding done once, rest given long enough to matter. Resilience isn't a thing you buy, it's a thing you time. That's the whole lesson those ranchers pulled out of the driest rangelands alive, and it's yours now for the price of a garden fork and a little patience. So next dry spell, when your neighbor reaches for the hose again, watering a weak lawn into staying weak, you'll know you've got a cheaper, tougher move. You'll know you're the herd. And if a herd can rebuild thick grass on the driest ground on earth for almost nothing, with no water bill and no seed sack, then your baked little corner of yard has officially run out of excuses. Go break a crust, lay your clippings flat, press your seed home, And then, hardest of all, leave it alone. Thank you for walking through this one with me. I'll see you next time. And until then, keep that picture in your head, the cracked desert floor going green with no hose in sight. And remember, it's waiting in your own ground too.